Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I get to learn a little bit more about somebody else's perspective on movies. And joining me for the first time is Jake, one of our writers at SiftPop. Jake, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Shane. Yeah, this is awesome.
Awesome. And before we get into our questions, I always like to give everybody a chance to shamelessly plug whatever they would like to shamelessly plug. So, what would you like to tell everybody about?
Oh man. It's funny. I'm actually on a little bit of a social media break right now, but I'll give you my Twitter.
Okay.
At Jacob_Kinman is that one. And let me. What's my letterbox username? I don't know. Let me see. Do technical difficulties. JH Kinman on Letterboxd,
There you
where
go.
I usually review anything I watch and try to give a few little notes here and there when I can. So that's about it.
There it's a nice range of like myself who writes nothing on Letterbox. I'm just like stars and
Yeah.
move on because it's like I have contemplated going in and linking like all of my reviews to the
Mhm.
movies. I'm like, but that takes time. Like if I did as I did it,
It's a lot.
that's one
Yeah.
thing, but then I have to go back and do thousands of movies. And then, some of our
Sure.
writers like Heath writes like memoirs about the
Mhm.
movies and it's just like very detailed and everyone in between. I get a kick out of
Oh
Robert's
yeah.
like one line reviews where he just like makes a
Uh-huh.
sassy comment and that's about it. But getting into our questions though, I always love asking this question because it's either people are like either oh they really have that one movie or they're Nick Cage from Unbearable. It's like how can you choose one from like a century of movies? But Jake, what's your favorite film?
I'm more on the Nick Cage side of this. I've been thinking about this a lot, and it changes. Like
That's fair.
there's probably there's probably five or six that I could move around into that top spot. But for today's purposes, I'm gonna go with the movie Boyhood by
Okay.
Richard Linklater as my favorite movie. There's something about it, just the way it's made, the process in which they went annually over 12 years and shot
Mhm.
this family growing up. You've got Eller Coltrane in the lead and Linklater's own daughter playing his sister,
Yeah.
which makes it even more realistic. That's really cool. I mean, I really, really love the Patricia Arquette performance.
Mhm.
She's incredible. And Ethan Hawke also. There, I can't explain it almost. It's like that with favorite movies, right? There's something about it. I just so I kind of grew up in the same era
Mhm.
as Mason does, like I don't know, 2002 to 2014 roughly. It's kind of
Mhm.
my childhood, adolescence. I'm 28 now. So I really relate to that. And it's not even like the same experiences that we had. My parents never got divorced or anything, which almost maybe even makes those scenes more compelling.
Mhm.
Like that entire, drunk dad segment of the movie.
Ugh.
And Yeah, I just think it's really, really well written, well crafted. And like I said, I could name five or six different others. I like to think I have a pretty eclectic taste, but yeah, that's kind of the one I'm landing on right now.
There you go. I know that it's a kind of film that you're not going to see a whole lot of something like that. It's
Yeah,
pretty unique and it's such an interesting dynamic and it's such a weird feeling like watching Ethan Hawke and Patricia Arquette like
yeah, I
actually
know.
age through the movie and
It
it's like
it
wait a
is.
minute. It's a once in a generation type kind of film
Mhm.
and a lot of respect for Richard Linklater for creating it. Now, Jake, what's your earliest memory of going to the movies?
This is a fun story.
Okay.
Let's see. It would have been 1999 at the Showcase Cinemas in Erlanger, Kentucky, and my entire family, extended included, aunts and uncles, went and saw Toy Story 2.
Nice.
And the funny thing about that is it started a streak of that entire group of family seeing every Pixar movie in theaters until I want to say like Cars 2, which is really when Pixar sort of falls off for a minute.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean that, and it's an early memory. I would have been 5 years old, so I don't remember a lot of that. Like I remember seeing parts of it in the cinema too, but it's sort of in flashes. But if we're going earliest, it's that one. Now I'm told there's a story of my very first movie ever in theaters that my dad always
Mhm.
likes to tell, which is Hercules in
Okay.
1997, which is cool because I love that movie so much.
Mhm.
Um, and I didn't make it all the way through that one. I think Hades might have been a little too frightening for me. Pain and Panic, I don't know, one of the something. And we had to leave. We had to leave about 20 minutes in, but that's my
You
fault.
did your best.
I tried. We tried. It takes practice. But
Well, I could always say I was there for my nephew Joseph's first ever movie going experience, which was when my brother made my sister-in-law drag a baby into John Wick chapter chapter two. And
oh well, okay.
I'm just like, what the hell are you doing with a baby here? They wound up
Yeah.
going out into the car because couldn't make it through the opening like scene where he's like revving up the car and did that whole entire chase. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell Joseph someday I was there for your first movie, and your first movie was
Right.
John Wick. So there you go.
Yeah. That's funny.
Now, Jake, do you have a particular favorite genre of movies?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think I have an eclectic taste. I can really watch anything. But I always go back to comedy as the favorite.
Okay.
I feel like comedy, it's something I grew up on. That's sort of like the first connections I made with people through movies were comedies, like my friends and I quoting Super Bad and Knocked Up and all those movies in that generation.
Hmm.
Even older stuff, Caddyshack, uh, Billy Madison, but stuff like that. And I think the thing about comedy for me is that it's something that you can incorporate into any genre. Like,
Yep.
and in a way, maybe it is the ultimate genre that because there's comedy for its own sake. Comedy
Hmm.
movies, obviously, but then any good drama horror movie worth its salt has to have those breaks of humor.
Hmm.
So I think it's yeah, in bigger doses or smaller, it's something that serves any genre. But as a genre on its own too, I think it's got such a rich history going
Hmm.
even all the way back to Buster Keaton or
Yep.
Charlie Chaplin, and it's just sort of um, if you look at movies as solely entertainment, nothing reflective, nothing insightful, whatever, it all goes back to comedy. So I think that's what I appreciate about it.
Absolutely. And it's funny you brought up Billy Madison because I just watched Adam Sandler's acceptance speech for the Mark Twain Award
Oh yeah.
for comedy. They should give him every award just so that we could listen to the speech that he gives, which is just pure comedy. He's like, for the winner of the Mark Twain Award for athleticism, math, sexual prowess, guitar virtuosity. And it's just like, everybody deserves a good laugh. And when you
Oh,
can
yeah.
find that comedy that like gives you all those laughs, it's a great feeling. Now, looking at some of the people behind the camera, who's your favorite filmmaker?
This is almost worse than the favorite movie conversation. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
uh,
Like, so I'll start by saying this. There's a handful of directors that I wouldn't call my favorites, but I'm really fascinated in. And I'm always trying to like pick up more of their filmography. Guys like Sidney Lumet or
mhm,
Hitchcock or even Scorsese to a degree. I've seen a lot of his films, but
mhm.
he's made so many movies. It's like it would be almost impossible to try to watch all of those. But I'm working on it.
You watch it
Um,
one a week, it takes you roughly 8 months.
hmm, okay, challenge accepted.
I know
I'm
from experience.
oh I might have to try that. I'm into it.
It's worth it though.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, but when I'm circling around my favorite, right? There's I'm vamping as much as I can because I'm still kind of deciding. But there's like so I'd say there's certain directors that fill certain roles for me is like what they do best. Like Paul
Mhm.
Thomas Anderson would be maybe my favorite auteur director. Tarantino, maybe my favorite screenwriter director.
Mhm.
I would maybe say Wes Anderson has my favorite visual style. But all that is to say that if you're talking about like checking all those boxes across the board, it has to go to the Coen brothers. I mean, I think they knock it out of the park with so many great movies. If you're just going through like their filmography, it's like I could. There's probably at least 5 of those that are in my top 50.
Mhm.
And even they are another one that I'm still trying to catch up on. But it's really just a lot of their older stuff I haven't seen. But yeah, I think it was Tarantino for a long time. And I respect Tarantino a lot, but the more I thought about it, I was like, I think pound for pound, it's got to go to the Coen brothers. Yeah.
Well, Jake and I just became best
Ah,
friends.
love it.
Cohen's are my favorite directors,
That's
and
cool.
that's how I started my other show was going through all the Coen brothers filmography. It takes a lot shorter than
Sure.
Scorsese,
Yeah. Not too
but
bad.
they have a lot of great films, and 2 of them are my top 10.
Ooh,
So love me
nice.
some Big Lebowski and No Country for Old Men, but like I could
Uh,
just keep watching their films for forever. So
yeah.
there we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. I just rewatched No Country for Old Men a couple weeks ago, and I mean, it's yeah, it's a masterpiece.
It's visual, it's cinematic experience at its best. Um, they do so much with saying so little. And I think that's really making the most out of something like film with that visual medium. But let's take a look at the other side of the camera. Who are some of your favorite actors, actresses?
Yeah, this is one that I thought a lot about as well, and I really that's one of my favorite things about film is
Mhm.
respecting the craft of acting. Um, honestly, most of my favorite films are made by a lot of the performances. So I thought about this for a long time, but I kind of went on the criteria of like if you're going through somebody's filmography, how many of those movies do you say that's a great performance? That's such a great performance. I mean, that movie would not be what it is without that person in the lead. Um, so I picked a male and a female.
Mhm.
I gotta go Al Pacino as my favorite male.
Hoo-ha.
I won't butcher the impression, but I mean, so many great movies. Like I went on a kick recently of watching a lot of his '70s stuff.
Mhm.
Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, and Justice for All, stuff like that. The Godfather, obviously, both of those, part 1 and 2, are incredible. His later stuff, I'm a big fan of. The Insider,
Yep.
um, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, his little bit role in that is so good. Donnie Brasco, Glenn Ross. Uh, yeah, he just has such great range, and
Mhm.
he's almost like evolved in his career over time. You've
Mhm.
got and I like both versions a lot. Like you've got the quiet '70s Pacino, who was almost sort of a heartthrob in a way, but had a lot of depth, and you see that really, uh, especially in Serpico and
Mhm.
Godfather. And then he gets a little bit older and a little more bombastic and shouty, but I like that version too. Uh, he's great. But and for female, speaking of the Coen brothers, I got to go Frances McDormand
Nice.
all time. I mean, just talk about so many great movies she's been in. Obviously, all the stuff with the
Mhm.
Coens, especially Fargo, Blood Simple, Burn After Reading.
Yep.
Um, but even the work she did with Wes Anderson, I'm a
Mhm.
huge fan of too. She was just in the French Dispatch, which was awesome. Moonrise Kingdom, stuff like that. And yeah, I really loved her in Three Billboards, Nomadland, all the her two of her three Oscars
Yep.
that she won. And she's incredible. Talk about range. I mean, you know what's funny? I think about her character in Almost Famous, which is like
Mm.
really different for her. She is almost that's maybe the most high strung you've ever seen
Mhm.
her play, maybe that I've seen, and yeah, just like from that to her and Fargo, or like the uh, other crazy person she plays in like Burn After Reading. It's just like she can carry
Linda
so much.
Litty.
Yeah, or even her character on Billboards, which like really resonated with me. Um,
Mhm.
and just she has so much depth and just so much talent. So yeah.
I remember even watching something like Tragedy of Macbeth, which it's like
Oh yeah.
just like, hey Joel, I want to be in a Shakespeare play. Make
Yeah.
it. Um, and there's just this one side eye she gives Denzel
Mhm.
Washington at one point. I'm just like, there it is.
Yeah.
One look works so great.
Uh,
That was such a great time watching her and Denzel Washington acting off of
oh, absolutely. That it
that.
was incredible.
That was impressive. Now, looking at that kind of movie where it's just like you could throw this on every day, watch it over and over and over again. What's that film for you,
Guess what? More Coen Brothers. It's Fargo.
Jake?
This is just a Coen Brothers episode, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say Fargo is my favorite Coen movie.
Okay.
No Country's a masterpiece, I know, but it's just like, and it's up there. It's probably like one below Fargo, but
Mhm.
there's something about just the complete construction of that movie that is like a warm blanket for me. Talk about great performances. Maybe it's the accents. I don't know. I feel like I'm uh, just up there in Minnesota having a nice time. Um, but I think it's like it's the quintessential Cohen
Mhm.
movie for me. Like exactly their sense of humor,
Yep.
exactly the kind of themes and elements that they want to use, and uh, I think it just soars. And once again, I don't know what it is, but it's like it's just a perfect movie for me that I can turn on and sort of, even though I know it's going to happen, it's like it's still
Mhm.
me.
Still shocking.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's interesting because like A Serious Man is obviously their most personal
Yeah.
and closest story, but like Fargo is like the perfect example of who they are as
Hmm.
filmmakers, what their voice is. And then throw in, it's like, oh, were you watching the Gopher game? And it's just like, he's funny looking.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
just it's endlessly quotable because everybody's accents are fantastic. And it's so awkward. And that's what I love about the
Hmm.
Coens is everything is just awkward
Hmm.
and nothing ever works out like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And Fargo is like that in a nutshell.
Oh yeah. I
Nothing
love.
goes right.
Yeah. I love how they just kind of launch you right into um William H. Macy's character, like right into his
Yeah.
scheme. They don't even set it up. It's just like, oh, okay, he's a crook, and we're gonna follow him down this path of despair. So
Hmm.
it's like you can't judge a book by its cover, right? Which is one of the big things of that movie. He seems like this completely innocent dork, and the first thing we see is him committing
Kidnapping
crimes.
his wife for blackmail
Yeah, right.
at that
Exactly.
ransom. What a jerk. That
Uh,
Jerry Lundegaard.
Jerry Lundegaard. Uh,
Well, you see, we got the true coat on. It's like, I don't want the true coat.
oh, I love that scene. Uh,
Oh man. I want to strangle him in that scene. I would totally be that
mhm.
other guy who just like, I
Yeah.
told you I didn't want this.
Oh, yeah.
That's just
Exactly. Yeah.
that's him. That's that character in a nutshell. That scene is just like doesn't care about anybody else, just trying to con the con. But shifting gears into, I always love asking this question because it could connect to other things that my guests have interest in. But what's a film that is closely connected to another interest of yours?
So this one I went with School of Rock.
Okay.
So we'll go to another early theater memory.
Hmm.
2003, I saw this movie with my aunt and uncle, I believe, normal weekend outing that we would do with them. And um, it was just a movie that was out. I don't
Hmm.
think they knew anything about it. And I was already kind of a fan of classic rock, even if I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 at the time. I grew up with it. My parents loved it. They would play it
Hmm.
in the car. I mean, I would even like hoard their CDs and try to listen to whatever I could find, and it just hooked me from an early age. And then you see this movie, and it's like there's all this new music that I'm hearing. Like I think that was the first time I heard Led Zeppelin, um, and like Stevie Nicks and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And it's like there's something magical about that movie,
Hmm.
anyways, aside from the classic rock element. But
100% Jack Black.
yeah, it's that Jack Black performance that really hooks you in, and maybe it's just like a chubby kid that loves classic rock.
Yeah.
I connected to that even more. Um, and it's just one that really got me interested even more in discovering the history of classic rock. I remember renting the DVD
Hmm.
and pausing it on that scene of like the chalkboard where they he
Yeah.
draws the whole diagram of the history of rock, and studying that I did for like hours. And I looked up a lot of those bands, went to my local library and like got a bunch of those CDs, and it was I was in the school of rock in a way.
There you go.
Um, I was their historian, if you will. But I mean, I even had like fantasies of Jack Black coming into my school and starting a band. Like it can happen.
Yeah.
It was
Mr.
gonna.
Schneebly.
Um, but yeah, I could go on, but it really solidified my love of that kind of music, and Jack Black as well.
Yeah, I can't hear the song Edge of 17 without thinking of School of Rock at this point.
Oh, oh,
It's
Joan
so
Cusack,
great.
she belts it.
Uh,
She's fantastic in that as well.
yeah, so great. And that movie would not work without Jack Black. Like,
Oh
he
no,
is the linchpin that just brings that whole movie to life.
well yeah, he commits about 5 or 6 crimes throughout the entire thing, so he's got to be charming at the very least.
Got to get
Yeah.
away with it. Um, now, who's a movie character that you feel a personal connection to?
Okay, so this one was interesting to me. I thought about this for a while, and this actually comes from a movie I watched today. It's kind of an obscure movie, Broadcast News. The character
Oh,
Aaron Altman. Um, so this character, if you haven't seen Broadcast News, it's about these three people who work in news at a big news network in Washington. Holly Hunter, Albert Brooks, and William Hurt. Incredible cast.
yep.
But Albert Brooks plays Aaron Altman, who is sort of the hapless best friend of Holly Hunter's character, who's in love with her. And I say I relate to him because I'm kind of a hopeless romantic. I've been in those
Mhm.
situations before. You make friends with a girl, you kind of fall for her. You might get rejected. It's happened. But just sort of that. I found myself in that situation a few times, and I don't know. I think maybe even the personality
Hmm.
of Aaron Altman I kind of connect to as well. Sort of, I'd consider myself intelligent. Maybe it's not as much as him, but sarcastic, and caring. Somebody who can form those relationships
Hmm.
despite um, unrequited love. I mean, I've stayed friends with a lot of those girls that rejected me.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm just a nice guy, but yeah. Also, if you haven't seen Broadcast News, listeners, check it out. It's amazing.
Have it sitting probably right about there.
Okay.
It's I love that movie, and I could definitely relate to him as well. I definitely sweat as much as him. Uh,
Oh, if I was a news anchor, that would be exactly what would happen.
oh
Yeah.
my God, I have been there. Just disgusting.
Mhm.
But that's such a great movie, and the trio of performances in that are just like top notch.
Oh,
And
yeah, fantastic.
people need to know Albert Brooks for more than just being Marlin from Finding
I
Nemo.
know, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it was interesting seeing because like I feel like most of my experience with him was Finding Nemo and Drive, and
Yeah.
there's no middle
Drive.
grounds. And seeing him in something like Broadcast News was really great, and getting to see him like in his prime too. Now, Jake, what's a film that you love that you feel like would surprise people?
I could have answered Broadcast News with this question really because it's so obscure.
Mhm.
Um, but the one I chose for this is, I suppose it's a well-known film, but it's not a very good film. It kind of goes back to nostalgia.
Mhm.
But I went with Little Nicky. I know it's
Hey,
not very good.
Valerie.
The Adam Sandler performance is objectively stupid, but I it gets me laughing. I don't know what it is, man. I think okay, so I said comedy is my favorite genre,
Yep.
right? But if we're going into like subsets of comedy, like I always go to the absurd side of things
Mhm.
that makes me laugh the most. Like,
Little Nicky
I'm a
certainly
big
is.
exactly. And I think that movie is the first example of absurd comedy I ever saw. Now
Mhm.
I watched this movie way too young, probably once again 8 9 years old. Um, and I don't know who bought me the VHS tape for that, but I had it, and it got wore out. That's for sure. But no, it's the first example of comedy that just went to 11, like
Yep.
that swung for the fences, that didn't hold anything back, and I just had this natural reaction of
Mhm.
uh, just just so funny. I don't know. I think I've thought about this, why I love absurd humor so much, and I think I don't know. I consider myself like kind of a practical person
Mhm.
in reality, so it's like if I see something that's completely outside of any sort of reality at all, it's always going to be hilarious to me. But yeah, Little Nicky is hated by a lot of people, and I can understand that. But
Makes me sad.
yeah, me too. I mean, we should be able to appreciate things for what they are. You know?
Which is the most absurd concept for an Adam Sandler movie. Adam Sandler playing the awkward Lishby son of Satan.
Uh,
It's just
yeah.
like,
I mean,
hey Valerie, you have a heart-shaped hiney.
hey, Patricia Arquette's in that movie, but she's
Yeah,
that more her. She's
making
actually
a couple appearances on here.
one of the better performances in that movie. Really. Um. Yeah. There you go. Little Nicky
That
getting
definitely
a
has
shout
the
out.
most genuine and sweet performance in that movie.
Mm.
Um, now, Jake, my last question for you is, what do you love most about movies?
Yeah. Once again, it's a loaded question. I mean, because I could go on about just appreciating the crafts of filmmaking.
Mhm.
You watch a Coen Brothers movie, for instance, and just the combination of like an incredible Carter Burwell score with the cinematography by Deakins and just everything. They're
Mhm.
incredible scripts, obviously, everything coming together.
Dickens.
Yeah, he's a master. But my sentimental answer is more like it can just transport you into another place, into another reality. Especially going into a theater and seeing it. There's so many times where I've um, had something going on in my life, or just sort of
Mhm.
something on my mind, and I'm always surprised at how inspired I feel after watching a good movie in theaters, just to like be better, to reevaluate uh, something, and it almost gives you a different perspective. I don't know. It's almost like if you see a story that's well told, a character's journey through someone else's perspective, that's like the ultimate form of empathy, right?
Mhm.
So that sort of comes back to you, and you reflect on, well, this person had this happen to them, whatever. What have I learned? What have I retained from what I've just seen, and how can I put that back on myself? Or you watch a movie that is completely disturbing. Like, I don't know, the most recent one for me was Men. Uh, and you just kind of stare at the wall and think about it for a while. But
It's like, what did I just watch?
yeah, it can go either way. But either way, you are it's the only version of teleportation that we have. I feel it's the only version of uh portal travel that we can do, because you do put yourself in that other person's perspective,
Mhm.
and the film's perspective, whatever it's trying to convey, if the story's told well. Uh, so that's my sentimental answer.
Well, I appreciate how you put that. It is our one way of doing that teleportation to a whole other kind of world and place. But how I always love to wrap up this show is I let my guest ask me a question. So, Jake, what would you like to ask the Wasteland
Oh,
Reviewer?
um, okay, huh? I'll have to think about this for a second. Hmm. Well. I thought so. I'll use one of your questions because I thought it was really interesting. The character that you connect to the most in all of cinema, because I know you've probably seen like a lot of movies, way more movies than I have.
I know
Um,
when I answered these questions myself a while ago, my answer was the main character from Perks of Being a Wallflower. Like I haven't experienced certainly have not experienced all the things that this character has experienced. So if you've seen the film,
mhm.
don't start freaking out at this point. But I feel like I kind of was that kid. I definitely was that wallflower kid in high school. I'm a changed man. I have grown up a lot
Yeah,
since then, especially in my years in college and since then. But like just that like quietness and that reservedness and I always had my head. I wish Paul Rudd was my English teacher, giving me book reports and stuff like
yeah,
that. Um, and you know, having those very strong feelings and always worrying about like, is somebody not gonna reciprocate them? But it's one added one that I'll throw in here, and I've gotten a lot of more appreciation for this is like I enjoy when I get to see more often because like I'm from New Jersey, I'm an Italian American. I came from a very ethnically Italian family. And you have The Godfather, you have Goodfellas, you have so many of these movies that are about like um mobsters and this little Italian Americans were like, I had such a profound experience watching this one short documentary by Martin Scorsese called Italian American. And I kind of felt like him because like he was interviewing his parents, and I grew up with my grandparents. And they remind my grandparents so much.
No,
And it was one of those kinds of things where it's just like, hmm, it 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 let me have a greater appreciation for like representation does matter, and being able to see yourself on a screen and also in a positive way. Like it makes me so happy when there's just movies about Italian Americans that has nothing to do with the mob and not Jersey Shore.
not Jersey Shore. No.
Ugh. Being an Italian American from New Jersey, nothing gets
Uh,
me more mad than Jersey
can only
Shore.
imagine that those that yeah,
Most of them aren't even from New Jersey. So like,
that's awful.
I'm nothing like the character John from Don John, but like just the Italianness of his family. I'm just like, I get this. Like I see Tony Danza in that movie. I'm just like, yep, that's an Italian man right there. I know that man. And it's one of those kinds of things. So like the more films I get to see like that, I can appreciate. But in terms of like an actual character that I feel like I have that connection, it's Charlie from Perks of Being a
Mm,
Wallflower, and makes me want to watch that movie again. Watched that
yeah,
in college for the first time, and that just like blew me away. I'm just like, I
yeah,
love this.
that is a great movie.
Yeah, because like most of my favorite movies are like sci-fi and fantasy and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't
Hmm.
think I see myself like Lord of the
Mm,
Rings.
right, right.
Like I'm not living those experiences.
Sure. You could come off this kind of cocky, maybe like, yeah, I'm Han Solo, it's not a big deal.
I'm
I'm
definitely not Han Solo. Like 100% not. That is not me. Maybe Chewbacca
uh,
though. Could be that.
I could see it. Yeah.
Especially when I had a lot more fur. I'm recently trimmed. So there you go. But Jake,
Uh,
thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Sean. Shane, sorry. I'm glad we can appreciate the Coen brothers together. I think
Absolutely. Made a new best friend tonight, so there you go.
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm actually about to watch Miller's Crossing for the first time.
Ooh,
I
that
I've been
it
on a kick lately, so I rented that.
you could feel the like the elements of the Coens kind of creeping into it with them
Mhm.
really finding their voice, but like it's a very different kind of like mobster movie than you might expect. Speaking of mobster movies, so there you go.
Oh
Um
yeah, yeah, I'm excited to watch it.
Enjoy. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.